Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Paul Kegavine at the Garland County Library in Hot Springs, and I'm here this evening with one of the most exciting guests we've ever hosted, virtually or otherwise. We're joined by the one and only Eddie Schmeckenbecher, who is the current Student and Family Support Services Director at the Arkansas School for the Deaf. Many of you may know him best as the interpreter for Governor Asa Hutchinson during the COVID-19 updates and other press conferences. Mr. Schmeckenbecher has been interpreting in one position or another for 48 years and wanted to give a shout out to his wife, Melissa, and his son, Cameron. So Eddie is here this evening to present a brief introduction to ASL, which of course stands for American Sign Language. He's going to cover some of the basics and explain why ASL is so important. And when he's finished with that, I'm going to hop back in and ask him some questions I've prepared and hopefully some from everyone watching in the audience as well. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask Eddie in a little bit, please post them in the comment section of this live stream. And also, as soon as this video is over, it's going to be uploaded permanently here to the library's Facebook page. So you will be able to go back and watch any parts where Eddie is teaching signs as many times as needed. And we'll also upload this video to the library's YouTube channel, hopefully within the next 24 hours. So Eddie, first of all, thank you so much for joining us this evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been a very good week.
Good. Glad to hear that. Well, so I'm going to let you begin, and I'll be watching, and I'll hop back in as soon as you're ready for me. So I'll see you on the other side.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm just so excited to be here today. This is such an honor for me. I want to just give you a brief introduction about myself. I have been interpreting for about 48 years in all kinds of different places. So any place that any of you can go, to the doctor, to any kind of appointment, I have probably interpreted something like that in my life. People ask me my 3 favorite places. And I'll just tell you this right now. Church is one of my favorite places to interpret. It's where I learned sign language many years ago. And my second is operating rooms. I love going into the hospital and seeing surgeries and interpreting for the patient there in the operating room. And third are funerals. And people look at me and go, "You're crazy for that." Part of the reason is I tell people, I know the music they're probably going to sing and the verses from the Bible that they use. I probably will know those too. And then I tease and tell people, and I look good in a suit and tie. So I tease about that. But what I want to do today is we're going to talk about ASL, American Sign Language, and we're going to start from the very basics. And like you said, you'll be able to review these again in the future. So we're going to start with the ABCs, and you can copy me. Whoops. Okay. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. We'll go through these again real quick, just because I sign them fast, I know, but I want you to have them, so we'll do them again for you. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. All right, so what you can practice, once you get the finger spelling down and you know the ABCs, you can finger spell things that you hear on the radio, maybe things you just see on a sign on the street, license plates, your name, just finger spell things. My wife teases me that she says, my hand's always finger spelling. I don't even recognize it anymore, just continually signs. Okay, some numbers now. We'll go through 10. So 1, 2, 3. This is different. 3, 4, 5, 6. Touch your little finger. 7, 8, 9, and 10. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay. Remember, when you're signing 6, 7, 8, and 9, the little finger is 6, and then you work your way up to 9. 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Since we're here with Garland County Library, I just want to give a few signs related to that. So this is a sign for library. All right. Book. Have your hands together and they open. Book. Book. So you want to open the book. Close the book. So just real briefly, I've told you, Paul said we'd talk about some grammar issues with ASL. So instead of saying open the book, open the book. Book, open and close. So nouns have 2 movements, verbs have 1. So for example, book, 2 movements, book, open the book, close the book. Again, open, close. So if you want to read, you got the paper in front of you, and this would be your eyes, read. So book, read. So have you read the book? Book, read, finish. Question mark. So that would be your facial expression is the question mark. So book, read, finish. And then you would say, me, just point to me. Read, book, finish. Okay, the word for sign, for sign language. Now, if you're talking about a stop sign, stop sign, stop sign. But for sign language, it's 2D hands signing back to you, sign language. Finger spell. And you finger spell things like brand names, names of people, names of towns. Some of the bigger towns have a sign name already, but some smaller towns don't have a sign name, and you have to finger spell those. So now, deaf. You can't hear and can't speak, and it can go either way, deaf. Hard of hearing, H, hard of hearing. I've seen some people say ear, hard of hearing, or hard of hearing. So it doesn't matter. Hearing, or speaking, hearing. So I'm hearing. I'm not deaf. Hearing. Teacher. Teach. Kind of grab, the graduation cap that you wear at the square. Teach, right? Your fingers along the side of it, or take information and give to the students. Teach. Teacher. Teach. Teacher. So student, you have the piece of paper. Remember we read? Okay, you've got that same piece of paper. Learn. Student. So teacher, this means person. So teach, person, teacher, learn, or student. Learn, person, student. Mother, or mother. Either one, you see mother or mother. Father or father. Boy, like you're grabbing the bill of a cap. And girl, the bonnet strings, where this comes from. So girl, boy, girl. Mom, dad, mom. Grandmother mom, mom. Grandmother, grandfather, grandfather, grandmother. So let's back up a little bit. Teacher, teacher, and teach. Learn, student. Mother, father, boy, girl, grandmother, grandfather. Deaf, hearing, hard of hearing. Okay. Help. Have your palm facing up and your right hand. Help. This is an A. Help. Help me. Help you. Help me. Help you. Help. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hello. This one's interesting. Hello. Hello. And goodbye. Just wave goodbye. Good. 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 Thank you comes straight out. Good starts your chin and hits your hand. Good. Good. Bad. Bad. Good. Okay. Real quick. Facial expression is very important when you're signing because it does the grammar part of the language. So I can say good, bad, like, I like that. Start with your hand up against your chest and come out to an 8. Like, I like that. I don't like. I don't like. You don't want to say, I don't like. Don't like. Like. Okay. Name. Name. 2 H hands. Name. And for many, many years, I wondered, why does that look like that? But remember, long, long time ago, they would talk about putting an X where your name is. And if you look down, that makes an X. Name. Just a way that it helps me remember what the sign for name was. So name. Name. Do you notice it's twice? And twice means noun. Name. Now, if I wanted to name my dog, I would name them. One movement, the verb. Name them, the verb, or name the noun. Name. Another one, chair. Chair. That's the noun. Chair. Sit down. One, the verb. Sit down. Noun, chair, sit. Name or to name. What? What? Or what? Either one would work. What? What? Where? Where? How? So you can ask the question, how are you? How are you? And some answers you would say is me or I'm fine. Okay, remember, mother, father, fine. You've got different parameters, and so the placement is all different, and it means something different. The movement's the same, the hand shape's the same, but the placement where it sits is different. So fine. Happy. 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 Again, you don't want to go happy. It's happy. Sad. Now. Sad. Sad. So 3 things. Fine. Happy. Sad. Sleepy. Sleepy. So, how are you? I'm sleepy. How are you? Fine. How are you? Happy. How are you? Sad. So one that I teach, but I say not in my class is, how are you? Somebody says bored. No, bored. Not in class. I want the class to be happy. Another word, work. Work. And school. School. College. College. School, but the next level up. School and college. So let's go back to mother and father, boy, girl, grandmother, grandfather. Help. Help me. Thank you. Thank you. Hello. Goodbye. Good. Bad. Name. What? Where? How? Happy. Sad. Fine. Bored. Work. School. College. So I can say you, me, you. What is your name? I would say, my name is Eddie. So you answer the question with a complete sentence. So, what is your name? My name is Eddie. One more quick thing about facial expression. Sign for understand. Understand. Flip your little finger. Flip your index finger off your thumb. Understand. Oh, I understand. Okay. Do you understand? I don't understand. So this is the same movement, the same hand shape, the same placement. Everything's the same except my facial expression is different. So I had 3 different questions. I understand. I don't understand. Do you understand? So when you're talking, you have facial expression all the time. And what's funny is when people start to sign, their facial expression goes completely blank, and they'll sign and not have any facial expression. So remember, facial expression is very important with American Sign Language. And I'm going to stop now. So Paul, if you want to jump back in, we can have some questions.
Yes, thank you, Eddie. That was awesome. Real quick for the audience, we did have a couple of people point out to me that there may have been some delay between Eddie's voice and the video, but it looks okay on my end. So I think that'll be fine when we re-upload it. So don't let that stop you from asking any questions.
Sure.
All right. Eddie, so first of all, what inspired you to get in this career path? Did you have anyone close to you that was deaf? Or?
Actually, nobody in my family was deaf. We went to church at Heritage Baptist Temple here in Little Rock, and they had a deaf ministry, and I was fascinated to watch the interpreter. And we joined the church in September, and then I started learning in September, and then by December, I interpreted a song, like the invitation song, that something was real slow, and then a year later, I interpreted the preaching. And I look back now and think, oh, those poor deaf people, because you have the interpreter training program that takes 3 or 4 years before you can really interpret, and I did that in a year. But what was real interesting, several of the deaf people started coming to our house, which forced us to get our hands up and communicate with them, which was really a good and benefited us a lot. So it really wasn't a conscious decision. This is what I want to do. It kind of just happened, and it became a career. One time I went to college at Liberty Baptist College in Virginia, and they knew that I was an interpreter, and I interpreted in church. And then we had a student in the college that was deaf. And they said, would you mind interpreting the class for her? I said, sure, because it's just second nature. And so I started interpreting, and they paid me. I thought, I can make money and do something I like. This is pretty cool.
So what led to you becoming Governor Hutchinson's go-to interpreter?
Okay. My job is at Arkansas School for the Deaf, and I've been there for about eight years. And about 3 years ago, the governor was my superintendent's boss. So at that time, before transformation happened. And so she reported directly to him. And one day they were talking, and she said that you probably need to have an interpreter with you during the press conferences. And she said, we'll supply the interpreter. And she's thinking, we'll supply Eddie to go and interpret for the governor. So I've been doing it for about 3 years, but I've been down on the YouTube channel in a square interpreting. So every time they have a press conference, they would call me to go to the Capitol and interpret. So had my suit and tie ready in my office.
Well, Eddie, you seem so wholesome. How do you keep this new fame and popularity from going to your head?
My wife tells me and tells people she keeps me grounded. So, and I've told her I'm trying very hard not to have a big head about this because I'm doing my job. And I've been asked that question before, but she always says I keep him grounded, and she does a good job.
So you and I talked about this at the beginning about how to keep up with fast speakers. You talked about Baptist preachers as a fun, fast example. Would you care to share that or any other stories?
Well, sometimes in meetings, my independent Baptist preachers tend to talk real fast, and that's how I learned interpreting for the preacher. And I mean, you go as fast as you can to keep up with them. Other people talk kind of slower. Just for an example, and I'm not criticizing, so please don't misunderstand me. The governor tends to talk very calmly, very evenly, and it's real easy to interpret for him. Dr. Romero does too. Mike Preston, he tends to talk a little bit faster. So if you watch me, I'm signing a little bit faster when he's talking. So.
I asked you earlier if you'd seen anyone sign an auction, and you said no, but that'd be a fun sight.
That would be tough. That would be tough to do.
We have an audience question from Susan, who says, Eddie, can you recommend a beginner book or video for learning ASL?
Okay. For learning ASL, always one of my suggestions is find a book that says ASL, American Sign Language. Don't pick one that says signed English, because that's real confusing. ASL is the language deaf people use. Any particular book? No, we have an app called ASL Pro, and you can download that on your computer, your phone, and that's vocabulary words. So there's several apps that you can download on your phone, and some of them are free, some of them have a charge. Some of the free ones, you get part of it, and then you have to pay to get the others. They're not that expensive. The best way is to meet somebody and communicate with them, because sign language is a 3D picture. You know, it's not 2D. So when you see a picture on a page of a book, it's kind of hard to make that visual. So the books I like for referring back to. But seeing a picture, a video is the best way.
Thank you. Remember, audience, don't be shy. If there's any words you want to know, Eddie will be happy to sign them for you. So how is wearing masks affected communicating with people who are deaf, like expressions and lip reading? And what can we do to make things easier?
It has really, the word I'm made it hard for deaf people to understand, because even though deaf people are not fluent lip readers, for the most part, some are, but most deaf people don't lip read for everything, but they use lip reading and facial expression for like the grammar part of it. And with this all covered up, it's hard to see what the expression is. So when you see somebody sign, you get part of it. And what I talk about in class sometimes is this is about 30% of sign language. This is the other 70%, the facial expression, the body language. So when you cover up this part, it makes it hard for deaf people to understand. They have some shields that come down that are clear that I've seen deaf people wear at school. We have some that have the shields and also have the mask with the cutout part for the mouthpiece, so that some of the kids can understand what the teacher is saying, signing and saying at the same time. But overall, it has really made it difficult for deaf people to communicate.
On that topic, audience question from Susan: what is the sign for face mask?
Face mask. I think when I first started doing the coronavirus, I was doing face mask, and then I've seen this one used more, face mask.
That's an easy one.
Yes.
Are there any other signs that are useful, especially right now during COVID?
This is a sign for COVID, because if you look at the picture of the virus itself, has the spindles on the side of it, so coronavirus.
Makes sense.
And face mask. I'm trying to think others that I would use during the press conferences and
or test.
Test positive and negative. Test positive and negative. And the PCR is just signed, the initials PCR, positive and negative.
Thank you. Jessamine asked, how do you sign names? Is it each individual letter, or are there easier signs for some names?
Good question. Most hearing people would fingerspell their names. If I'm introduced, I'd fingerspell. Even if I was meeting a deaf person, I'd fingerspell it first. Deaf people will give you a sign name. When I started learning, my sister and mom were all right here. Had Eddie, my mom's name is Imogene, and my sister's name is Melinda. So they gave us the initials right here. So really the name sign is kind of arbitrary, and a deaf person will give you a sign name. So even if somebody else's name is Eddie, it could be something else because it's not that particular name associated with that sign. Does that make sense? So another person whose name would be Eddie, just for example, it could be something completely different than my name.
So it's almost like a signature, like kind of unique.
Unique for yourself, yeah. And sometimes, for example, if I moved to another city or something, and there was a man or a woman, it doesn't matter, and their sign name was this, and it might be Emily, for it's a woman, I would change mine because I'm the hearing person, because I'm moving into their area. So I would have to say, okay, what can you give me a sign name for?
Okay.
So it's not related to, it's related to your name, not any other arbitrary.
And you just showed this in a couple of ways, but Shannon wanted to know what your name sign is.
An E right here on my shoulder.
How do you handle your last name?
I have to spell it. And most deaf people will tease me and say, Eddie, SCH, and that's what they call me a lot of the time. So, just for example, I went on a mission trip to Honduras, and one of the men there, his name was Ephraim, and this was his sign name. And so when I went down there, since it was mine, they gave me the sign name because of my long last name. So that's what deaf people tease me, and I accept it because it's true.
Yeah,
a long name.
You make mine seem easy.
Yeah, yours is tough too.
Susan asked, what ages attend Arkansas School for the Deaf?
The kids come in at 2 years old, and we have classes for 2, 3, 4. They can stay in the dorms from all around the state when they're 5 years old or potty trained. And they go through school, first, second, third grade, just like normal public schools, and graduate at 12th grade. We also have a program called ADCC, Arkansas Deaf Career Center, and that has been set up to keep students that want to stay and have more training. They also look for jobs and things like that, and they can stay on up. Used to, the kids could stay on campus through the year of their 21st birthday. So they would stay on campus and be in school until they're 21 years old. And then they set this program up several years ago, and it is very popular. Even some students that have graduated from other schools have come in to work in this program. And it's a very good program. Casey Brown is in charge of it. So.
Shannon asked, how do some words like COVID become official signs?
Well, most of the signs would start being developed either on the East Coast or West Coast. Where that one came from, I'm not sure. So typically, more deaf people tend to live in Washington, D.C., around the Gallaudet area because they graduate from college, and some of them tend to stay there and work for different agencies there in Washington. So some of the signs tend to develop in those East and West Coast. And some of the signs, exactly where that one came from, I'm not sure, but it just shows I've seen people use it, so that's where I just took it and used it. Other signs are developed through the year. For example, selfie. That's been developed, and people, I don't know where it came from, but you see people going, and that was just developed recently because you didn't have that several years ago. So it just depends on the nature of technology and what's going on in communities around. So deaf people tend to develop the signs.
I see. So how does the ASL learning experience compare for a person who is born deaf versus a person who becomes so later in life?
Good question. So just for example, the kids that come to school at age 2, 3, 4 basically have no language, and they're taught language there. And so, and the teachers we have are phenomenal. I've interpreted some of the parent teacher meetings and look at the work, and I'm just amazed at how they've improved because the kids are learning. So they have no language, and this is their language, and they pick it up real quick. Somebody who is older and deaf may not have the same experience because they're so used to talking. And even though they can learn the signs, their friends, all of their acquaintances tend to be hearing, and they don't tend to get involved with the deaf community. So they probably won't learn as quick as the kids do. I hope that answers the question. I don't mean to be rude, but older people would tend to not learn as fast because of the association around with other deaf people. But when the kids pick it up and when they learn something that connects to something they like, they start picking it up real quick.
Makes sense. What would you say for a non-deaf person the largest challenge is for learning ASL?
Getting your hands up. I have students that don't like to get their hands up for some reason, but getting your hands up and practicing, and it's okay if you make a mistake. That's it's kind of like typing or playing the piano or playing any kind of music, you've got to practice it. And if you don't practice, you're not going to be successful with it. So you've got to practice daily. Find somebody who's deaf and let them help you, associate with them to improve your skills.
So speaking of mistakes, are there any signs that are very similar that can easily be mixed up?
Yes. Usually in context, they're understood. Some of them, I'm trying to think of like 99 French fry. They're very, very similar, but in context, you would know what you're talking about because this is an F. It's also a 9. Mm-hmm. So 99 and French fry. And then if you did it back and forth, it's preach. If you circle, it's Friday. Or furniture. Turn it backwards, it's Friday. So sometimes you get them a little confused, but in context, you're pretty well understood then.
A question from Susan. Do students have the opportunity of vocational learning at the ASD?
Yes, they do. In the past, we've partnered with Metropolitan Votech, and we had students would go in the mornings for classes. And then we also have Votech, the Votech building, which we have typing or computer. See, what else do we have? We have an Agri program set up now, and recycling, and we're doing a lot of stuff with that right now. In the past, we had welding and carpentry, and we don't have a teacher right now for that. We're wanting to get another one. We have culinary arts program, and that is very popular with the kids. I think because they get to eat too, but a really good culinary arts program. Some of the students have actually graduated, gone to Pulaski Tech and taken their culinary arts program and are working in restaurants right now as the cooks.
I have a question from Tony who says, I have a loved one who has 50% hearing. Should I encourage them to learn ASL and consider learning it myself just in case?
Yes. I think anytime that you can sign with somebody else, it can only help you. So if both of you took classes together, I think that would, and practice together, that would help both of you. And you can talk in places where there's not supposed to be any noise. At the library, you can sign back and forth. But I would encourage people to learn signs anyway. But if you have a 50% loss and you have somebody else that can sign with you, that helps you learn.
Quiet libraries is a stereotype of the past. Tony has a follow-up question about his loved one. What level of hearing is considered a disability?
I'm not exactly sure. If you talk to somebody at Arkansas Rehab Services, they can help you find the answers for that. Arkansas Rehab Services have offices set up all over the state. If they're in Hot Springs, I know Hot Springs has a facility there. I'm not exactly sure where it is now. It used to be at Hot Springs Rehab Center, but I don't know if it's still there or not, but I know that Hot Springs has an office, and that would be a good place to go and talk with them.
Speaking of Hot Springs, can you do the sign for Hot Springs in Arkansas?
Hot Springs. The sign for hot, just hot, but Hot Springs. Hot Springs.
See, so it doesn't change being a city name. You just.
Well, in Arkansas, we know that sign name, Hot Springs. If you went to Texas and said, I'm from Hot Springs, they'd look at you like, no. Little Rock is just LR, but a lot of the cities, the big cities, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, New York, most everybody would know those signs. But for the smaller towns, Hot Springs is one that we know in Arkansas. And if you went and said, I'm from Hot Springs, they'll use Hot Springs. Okay, gotcha. And go from there.
What was it for Arkansas?
ARK.
I see.
The old postal system sign, ARK.
Jessica asked, are there any places in Central Arkansas that you can go to get more practice with ASL? If you don't use it, you lose it.
You're right. And I've said that before. Right now with COVID, it's kind of sticky. Used to, people would volunteer on campus to work in tutors. As a tutor, they do a background check and they would tutor in the labs. Different churches around have deaf ministries. That's a good place to go. Sometimes they advertise that some of the Starbucks will have like a deaf meet and greet. I know that UALR has the interpreter training program, and they used to set those up kind of regularly at the Starbucks. But right now, I'm just not sure.
In ASL, is there a time when a person is considered fluent?
What do you mean? That was a question. I think just being able to communicate. I don't know the word for fluent, but I teach a class at Arkansas School, ASD, and Arkansas School for the Deaf, on Monday nights. And when you're finished with that class, it's a 10-week course for an hour and a half. When you're done with that class, you can communicate on a very basic level with a deaf person. You're not an interpreter, but you can communicate. And that's the building blocks. We have ASL 1, 2, and 3. Now that's our ASL 1, 2, and 3. That's not the same as if you went to UALR, a whole different ballgame. But these classes, the courses, and by the time you're done, you can communicate pretty well with a deaf person. Again, you're not an interpreter because that's a whole nother skill to learn, but just able to communicate. And so fluent, it depends on how much you practice, and that will guide you into communicating more.
What would you say someone who's learning usually grasps first? Is it understanding signs or being able to display them? Or do they kind of go together?
Sign them. That's what we tend to practice. I remember when I was teaching at UALR years ago, we would teach and we would talk. And so we noticed the students would sign, but if somebody signed back to them, they would kind of miss things. So then we changed and started teaching the classes with no voice. And then we saw that the students were picking up communicating better because they're able to be more receptive and are trained to see the signs and understand them and then produce them. Producing them is probably the easy part, but reading and understanding is a little bit tougher.
Thank you. And just want to give another call for audience questions before we get too close to the end here. If there's any words you want to know or just any other questions you have in general, please ask them in the comment section. And we just got one from Susan. What are the requirements for becoming an interpreter?
UALR has an outstanding interpreter training program. They have a bachelor's degree, and sign language is a bona fide language, and being an interpreter is a very good paying job. And it varies, and the opportunities now are wide open to interpret. Just for example, I need interpreters on campus, and I call sometimes 13, 14, 15 people, and they say, sorry, I'm already working somewhere. And so we need more interpreters. To get trained, first, we have a state level test. It's called the QAST, a Quality Assurance Screening Test, and it has levels 1 through 5. And when you pass any one of those levels, then you can apply for a license here in the state of Arkansas. Arkansas has a license requirement. You cannot interpret and get paid for it without the license. And so you've got to take some type of screening system before you can get the license. Another one is the National Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf. They have a certifying group. And right now in Arkansas, there's probably, I would say about 45 nationally certified interpreters working. And then they have an educational certifying system. I'm drawing a blank on the name of it. But so those three are here. Texas has their own system called the BEI. And I'm not sure what that stands for either, but they have, Texas is a whole nother country. So they have their own system. And then National Association of the Deaf, I'm not sure if it's still in effect or if it's been taken down, had their certifying group too. So any of those screening, testing, certifying bodies, you get any of those, then you can apply for a license and then you can interpret in Arkansas. And some of the things, some of the things you do, like if you get levels 1, 2, or 3, you can interpret some places, level 4, 5, more sophisticated places. And then we have the nationally certified, which will let you interpret more hospitals. And then the court has their own certification on top of that. You have to pass some other requirements to interpret in court.
Do you know roughly off the top of your head what the number of deaf citizens in Arkansas is like?
The last I heard was about 18,000. And I'm not sure exactly when that was. And that can be a range of severely deaf to hard of hearing or signing, about 18,000. Maybe more.
Question for Jennifer. Do you know of any ASL classes in Hot Springs? And what is the class time for your Monday classes?
In Hot Springs right now, no, I don't know of any classes. I actually had a call today about classes in Russellville, and I've called a couple of people and I don't know of anything. I know that there were some classes recently in the Fayetteville area. My class meets at 6 o'clock on Monday nights from 6 to 7:30. The cost is $100 and that covers everything. And I provide all the paperwork. In the past, we've had, 80 people in the class. Any parents that want to come, I don't charge parents of deaf individuals, the deaf kids. They can come without paying. We want them to learn. And then each one of the classes, they all meet on Monday night from 6 to 7:30. I have 2 other teachers that are teaching ASL 2 and ASL 3. See, and this is coming up on our 6th week right now. I tend to have it after Labor Day and we'll get out before Thanksgiving. And then we'll start in January. I'm not sure the exact day yet, but 10 weeks and end before spring break. If you go to our webpage, Google Arkansas School for the Deaf, and if you scroll down, there's an orange button that says ASL Info. Click on that, and it gives you the list of the classes.
Thank you. And we had a Facebook user, your name doesn't show up, but they say, I'm teaching a National Park College course via continuing education courses. So if you want to message the library more information about that, maybe we can post about it soon.
That'd be great, yeah.
I have a question asking for the sign for tennis. Maybe you could show a few other sports too.
Tennis. Just like you're holding a tennis racket and swinging at tennis. And you want to stay in your signing box. I know you really swing out, but you stay in your signing box for tennis. So ping pong would be something small. Football. Or football. It can be either one. This one you tend to see more. Basketball. Soccer. Bowling, very popular with deaf people. The bowling or bowling. Okay, other sports. Golf. Golf, just like you're hitting a golf club. I can't sit down and do that.
Got a question asking for you to sign "You're welcome" and "Princess."
Princess. 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 Because prince or king shows the sash. Queen with a Q, K with a king, prince with a P, and then princess, a sash like this, princess. And what was the other one? I'm sorry.
"You're welcome."
You're welcome. Okay, I'm getting on my soapbox right now. The sign for thank you and you're welcome are the same. I know that many people use "you're welcome" or "you're welcome." The actual meaning for that is like "welcome to my house." But I see this used many times for "you're welcome." So thank you, you're welcome, or thank you, you're welcome.
Have a question from my coworker and your biggest fan, Karen. She says, she did your radio ad, by the way.
Okay.
Since you and your neckties have become so popular, has this popularity brought new attention to ASL and those who are hearing challenged?
Yes, I think it has. When I'm out around and I meet people and they say, "You interpret for the governor," I've really noticed sign language. I was talking with one man, Southern Arkansas, that said this has brought a new light on the School for the Deaf and deaf people in general. And I think it really has. Not that I am promoting myself. My first goal is that deaf people understand what's going on in the conferences. And then any of the other things like deaf people being recognized, sign language being recognized is the perk that go along with that.
I see. And how do you pick out your ties?
What I've teased before is that I have one suit, 3 shirts, and hundreds of ties. The ties were my dad's that have been passed down to me. Other people have given me ties before, and I'm old, so I've been buying ties for years and years. When I was teaching at UALR, we wore a tie to class. Wore suit and tie to church for many years. So just a collection of ties. And I still, if I see a tie that I like, I buy it. Last year at Christmas time, after Thanksgiving, I started wearing a tie that showed Christmas. And I just wore one every day and had a different one through the school year. So,
thank you. I have a few more questions for you, and I want to do a last call for audience questions. Now, we could keep you here all night going through the entire dictionary, but if anyone has anything they just want to know, be sure you get it in now. Last chance. Question from Tony. What's the most interesting place or oddest interpretation job you've been a part of?
Again, when I said I like hospitals, those places, going to interpret in the hospital has been fascinating. And you find yourself in different situations. I've interpreted delivery, which was fascinating. One time I was interpreting for a person who had back surgery. So in order to see them and communicate with them, I was sitting on the floor looking up at them laying on the table. Wow. And they had their hands down and signing around the table so I could understand what was going on and they could understand. Just different places. When I interpret a funeral, I tend to interpret standing kind of at the head of the casket. One time the preacher called me up and I had to shake hands with everybody that passed through. Typically I'm standing back, and that's not because it's not about me. I'm just there to facilitate communication. Just any place that you can go, I probably interpreted in that situation. So all kinds of different places, doctor's offices. Oh my gosh, so.
Fun one from Jessica. What is your favorite joke to sign?
Okay. Jokes with sign language are different than jokes with hearing people because we use play on words. Deaf people use play on signs. So this is an S. So Sears, Sears, Sears. El Paso, for an L passing an O for El Paso. And this one, this is a sign for milk, so pasteurized milk. I've been in an audience before with hearing and deaf people presenting, and the deaf person will tell a joke, and the deaf people just laugh and laugh and laugh, and the hearing people are looking at it going, I don't understand. But it's a play on signs, where ours is a play on words. And when I'm interpreting sometimes and the speaker says a joke, I interpret it and the deaf people go, it's not funny.
Jennifer asks, is there any system in place for those of us who want to practice with live persons?
If there's somebody around with Zoom or FaceTime, that would be the best way. Anything formal set up, not that I'm aware of right now.
Let's see. So a couple questions for me. What changes would you like to see become more mainstream to make the world more accommodating for people who are deaf?
People just to learn sign language. And I don't mean become interpreters. That's not what I mean. But if you just learn the basics, take a class or two and sign and practice, that would help in a restaurant. Just imagine yourself going to another country and trying to order a hamburger at McDonald's. You can't understand them, they can't understand you. But here in America, if a deaf person goes to McDonald's, the people behind the counter, now I'm just picking McDonald's, it doesn't have to be that, it's any restaurant. If they knew just a little bit of sign language, how much smoother the communication process would be. Even at a restaurant where they're taking your order, if the waiter or waitress knew just some basic sign language, what they serve, how much easier that process would be.
Did I read correctly? It's the third or fourth most used language in the world.
Third, I think Spanish and English and ASL. That's what I understand. So,
are there any terms or usage in language where you hear people talking about people who are deaf that you would encourage people to be more sensitive about? Like say we no longer use the word mute to refer to people. Is there anything else that you think people should be aware of?
People who are deaf, we just want to be called deaf. And that's an acceptable term. Part of hearing impaired is more based on hearing people's terminology, but deaf people say, I'm deaf or I'm hard of hearing, and very proud of being deaf. So anytime you see the word deaf spelled with a capital D, it means deaf culture, maybe ideologically deaf, but it means the deaf culture part, the signing. And deaf people have their own culture, just like other cultures around.
Makes sense.
So, and I go on and on and on. I'm sorry.
No. Let's see. Jennifer says, are there people you know who would want to practice with us?
Oh, not right off the top of my head. I don't know of anybody right now. And that's not saying that they won't. I just can't think of anybody right now that would be available. You can contact me at the school. My email is on the webpage, the ASL info. If you want to contact me through that, maybe we can set something up.
Got some praise. Susan says, thank you for sharing your ASL knowledge tonight.
Thank you.
And she enjoys watching you on the governor's updates. And then Karen says, thank you, Eddie. You've been a bright spot during this strange time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. One more question from me before we start wrapping it up. Now, I don't want you to use any examples, but are dirty words the same in signing, or do you spell them out?
There are signs for those too. A lot of times, if you give me one cuss word, I'd probably give you 3 or 4 signs for it. And they're always coming up with new ones just to throw people off from watching the signs, so.
I see.
Yeah.
So do you catch your students using them?
Yes, sometimes. And, we have to learn those signs too. And sometimes when we're learning them, it's like, what did you say? Oh. But we notice the students signing something and have to ask another student what they say, somebody that we trust. So, oh yeah, they're kids just like we were when we were in high school. So
part of deaf culture. Jennifer, who asked if you knew anyone to practice with, appreciates your answer and says she just had a deaf person come into the ER.
Really?
I guess that addresses the importance of it.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are agencies around that you can call to request an interpreter. Or when I was, all through the years, I would get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning to go interpret at the hospital. And many, many times I've gone to the hospital 2, 3 in the morning to interpret. So.
Wow. All right, Eddie, I'm going to give you the final word if you want to reiterate why ASL is so important to society and anything else you'd like to say.
We just need more people to learn sign language, to communicate, just to make life easier for everybody. And there are many opportunities to learn sign language. Internet has lots of opportunities, so I encourage you to learn sign language.
Thank you. All right. Well, it's been a real pleasure. This is one of my favorite programs we've done, and hopefully we'll have you back in the future.
Sure. Just give me a call.
Absolutely. And audience, this should be available on Facebook immediately afterwards if you'd like to refer back to it, and we'll post it on YouTube hopefully at some point tomorrow. And you have the thank yous pouring in from the audience. So
Thank you so much. I appreciate you calling me, and I appreciate getting the chat with you and share information about deafness.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.